salvation, and happiness. It's your season. It's your time. God has plans for your life to prosper you and to give you hope and a future. Join us and learn how God's love and power can bring hope and happiness to your life. This is your opportunity for motivation, encouragement, and purpose.
HBCU, stand up. Like Jefferson. Let's go. My HBCU better than yours. 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 Where you from? From the north. Where you from? From the south. Where you from? From the east. Where you from? From the west. My HBCU better than yours. My HBCU better than yours. Either from the SWAC or the MEAC. Come on. CIAA or the CIAC. HBCU is where the beat we compete, but we're family. They're from the SWAC, from the MEAC, CIAA.
Podcast that I'm hosting today. So, hey, welcome to back to another edition of the HBCU Man Cave, your space, a safe space for men to relate, relax, and release. Now, I'm your host today, Anthony Brown, a 1992 graduate of Bethune-Cookman University, and tonight we're going to dive into a topic that is often overlooked, but incredibly important: vulnerability in men. We're calling this episode "The Value of Vulnerability." All right. So now, vulnerability is often seen as a weakness in our society, especially among men. But as Dr. Brendan Brown eloquently states, vulnerability is actually a sign of courage. It's about showing up and being seen when you have no control over the outcome. It's the core of all emotions and feelings, and it's essential for forming genuine connections, all right? To help us navigate this conversation, I got two distinguished guests tonight. I got two fellow brethren out here from HBCU world. First, we got the good brother, Coach Derrick Wilmore, a proud alum of Jackson State University. Derrick has always been a strong advocate for emotional intelligence and mental health, and he's here to share his insights and experience. So welcome, good brother Derrick, to the show again. Welcome back.
Thank you, brother. I'm ready to do combo.
Our second guest is Kevin Keys, a Miles College alum and a dynamic individual running for state representative in Michigan. Ba, 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 ba. Kevin's journey in public service and politics has given him a unique perspective in the role of vulnerability in leadership. So welcome, Kevin, to the show. Brother, how you doing today?
Thank you. I'm doing blessed. I'm just happy to be here.
Now, according to Michael David Adewusi, understanding and expressing our emotions is critical for our mental health and well-being. It's time that we break the stereotype that men should be stoic and tough. Real strength lies in being honest with ourselves and those around us. So sit back, relax, and let's get real about vulnerability on this HBCU Man Cave, where we come to relate, relax, and release. So be sure to hit that like, share, and comment. Better yet, invite a brother to join the conversation in the chat. Now, let's get to it. All right, Derrick, Kevin, thank you both again for joining us tonight. And let's talk about what vulnerability means to each of you. Derrick, you want to go first at this? You want to take a stab at it?
I can let Kevin jump into it if you want. If not,
all right. I'll jump in because it's crazy. Just a couple of hours ago, I was having the same conversation when I told my PR person that we were going to be going and it was going to be about vulnerability. They said, well, the first question you should ask yourself is, what does vulnerability looks for you? And it took me a minute to actually think about that answer, because it's like, okay, well, like the simple answer is, yeah, vulnerability just simply means like the ability to, let your guard down and actually put yourself in the forefront to actually express how you feel. But then it's like, okay, well, if that's what vulnerability is, what does it look like? And when I say that what it looks like to me is, being able to sit in front of everyone and actually tell my story and the challenges that I face and the things that I've been through. Not a lot of people like to tell, especially in our community. We hear so many times, like so often, Like, oh, don't let, what's going on in our household get out our household, or don't, what happens behind these walls, don't tell nobody. So we don't never really be vulnerable into telling how we actually feel and what we go through because of that stigma. So we don't talk enough about how we can be vulnerable. So that's what, vulnerability means to me.
I like that. I like that for sure. I think about, man, when I think about vulnerability, I think about
Celebrate the excellence of HBCUs with the HBCU Trivia Game. This board game provides an exciting and educational way to learn about notable alumni, historical events, sports news, and more. This trivia game is sure to be a hit and perfect for college-bound youth, alumni, and the entire family. Don't miss out on this opportunity to support, educate, and entertain Get the HBCU Trivia Game today. Go to hbcutriviagame.net to order.
Did you know you can apply to over 50 HBCUs for only $20? You can with the Common Black College application. My name is Robert Mason. I'm the founder of the CBCA. Over 250,000 students have completed the application and received multiple acceptance letters, financial aid packages, and scholarship offers. So visit our website at commonblackcollegeapp.com to pay only $20 to apply now. And don't forget to order your copy of the book, Get Educated, The Man Behind the Common Black College Application. Thank you, and get educated.
It's time to book your homecoming or classic weekend hotel room today through HBCUHotels.com and help support HBCU students. Our rates are unbeatable for hotels such as the Sheraton, the Residence Inn, La Quinta Inn and Suites, Best Western, the Courtyard Marriott, Holiday Inn, and the Westin Hotel. Plus, when you book through us, a portion of the revenue will go toward scholarships for HBCU-bound scholars. Book your hotel and help a student reach their chosen HBCU destination. HBCUHotels.com is not affiliated with, officially connected to, or endorsed by the institutions of higher education identified in the event listings or any of their subsidiaries or affiliates.
For more than 75 years, UNCF, the United Negro College Fund, has worked to combat deep-rooted obstacles to higher educational access, achievement, and career success, annually providing financial and educational support to our 37-member historically black colleges and universities. Please give what you can. UNCF, our HBCUs, and our students appreciate you and your donation, no matter how big or small. A mind is a terrible thing to waste.
Rewriting my story. That's what I specifically think about, rewriting my story. And what I mean by that is I think about ways I can redefine myself in different avenues that I've suppressed. I think about ways that I could redefine my reality, what's in front of me right now, and how can I change my trajectory within my reality by being vulnerable. And so I think for me, being vulnerable, like how I came up, I grew up around a lot of women, but I feel like I was never vulnerable. As cliche as that might sound, like I feel like I was never vulnerable, even though I grew up with a whole bunch of sisters, no pops in the house. It was very hard for me to open up. And this is something that I just recently learned in my 20s. Heading into my 30s, being vulnerable was, you have to be very intentional with being vulnerable. And so when you make that conscious effort and decision to make that switch, I feel like everything, as you know, at least for me, fell in place.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Well, I'm thinking about vulnerability is really about just not so much about letting your guard down, but just making yourself, I'm not gonna say open, but making yourself available to what's possible.
Yeah.
Even though when we don't know sometimes we don't know what's about to happen. But just being open enough to be able to say, okay, I'm gonna learn, I'm gonna figure this out. I'm not gonna run from it. And we're gonna go head in on it, not to be, bullheaded and like, not like I'm confronting it or combating it, but I'm like, okay, I'm here, I'm in it, now let me live through it. and just be open to whatever happens next.
I think, man, when you said that, it took me to where the role of the man is. I talk to women in my family all the time, and they talk about how they always have the plan B. Their plan B is always the man, like as far as emergencies and situations go. Like the man doesn't have anyone to quote unquote save him. We are the problem solvers. We're the providers, the protectors, the preparers. You know what I'm saying? We don't have quote unquote plan Bs. And so when I heard you talk about your perspective of being vulnerable, I thought about that. Like, man, whenever we're going through hard times, sometimes we don't have that space to be vulnerable. Like you quote unquote man up. You gotta take it on the chin. You gotta figure this thing out because you don't really have the space to be vulnerable because nobody's coming to save you.
Who's coming to save us?
Ain't nobody coming to save you.
Well,
who's coming to save us? Go ahead. I'm sorry, Kevin. Go ahead.
A black woman is gonna come save us. That's they always. Let's shout out to our black women. They are the ones who come to our rescue every time. So that's who coming to save us. I mean, but I get what y'all saying in a sense. Like, you know, we always have to be that hero. We always have to be that protector. We always have to be. So it's like we're not able to come in and say, look, we got our own problems because most times the family's coming to us. You know, we are the ones that's supposed to make the change, and we're supposed to actually be the ones that's actually like going out there and saying, hey, we got the solution. But sometimes we need somebody to talk to.
Yeah.
And when we don't have that, it turns into like emotionally damaged grown men.
So I'm going to go back to one of my prevailing questions that we open up with. Is being vulnerable the same as being weak?
I was about to say, like, again, me being an elementary school teacher, kids gonna fight, right? Sometimes I gotta tell them, just walking away don't mean you're weak. It just means that you're smart enough to make the decision not to do something that you know can get you in trouble.
Right.
That's just simple as that. I mean, you can be vulnerable and tell somebody how you feel and not let somebody walk over you.
Yep.
You know, I can sit here in front of y'all and be vulnerable and tell y'all the story of my path and my trajectory in my life, but that doesn't mean that when it comes down to it, I'm weak or I can't handle what I got going on or I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do or I can't sit there and move how I need to move to be a successful black man. So it's like that just because I'm vulnerable doesn't mean that I'm weak. But then it also depends on what you're vulnerable to. If you're vulnerable to like good, if you're vulnerable to sharing a story, that's one thing. But if you're vulnerable to trouble, if you're vulnerable to the wrong crowd, then that's a different type of vulnerability. So it's like it depends on the type of vulnerability as well.
Yeah.
Here's Grandma Florence after that flood wiped out the whole neighborhood.
Sometimes I just cannot believe all the storms we've gone through here.
I can only hope that we'll be able to leave this house to you one day, baby. You're our legacy.
Planning for these disasters will make sure we're safe, and is the best way to protect that legacy.
Your family is your legacy. Planning for a natural disaster will make sure you're all safe. Visit ready.gov/plan for the tools and tips you need to start your emergency preparedness plan today.
There's nothing better than being inspired and renewed daily by the power of God. In Morning Tea with the King, author Tish Barnhart shares inspiration through a 90-day devotional that will rejuvenate your mind with scripture and your body with daily suggested herbal teas. You'll begin to see that every experience brings about a different perspective on how to view the things that are happening in our lives as we continue on our journey. Available at Amazon, your local bookstore, or at trilogy.tv.
Attention ministry leaders. Have you ever considered growing your ministry with television? Well, the Daily Gospel Network could be what you've been looking for. As one of the nation's largest Christian broadcasting companies, the Daily Gospel Network broadcasts all over the world on popular streaming platforms like Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV. If you're looking to grow and reach more people, the Daily Gospel Network could be your solution.
At the time, I just wasn't thinking. I used social media to vent. I wish I would have thought about the effects of scaring people. I didn't mean for that to happen. People took it as a terrorist threat. The university got shut down. I got arrested by the FBI. And now, I don't know what my future looks like. I search my name on the web almost every day and look at the stuff. It's not going away. Think before you post.
My HBCU better than yours. My HBCU better than yours. My HBCU better than yours.
Listen, I want to go back to some of the comments in the chat. But again, if you're just now joining us again, you are watching the HBCU Man Cave. I got Coach Derrick, Wilmore, and Kevin Keys. I'm Anthony Brown. We are here having this great conversation again. Relate, relax, release. Today's topic is about the vulnerability of men. You know, and what does it mean? Just being open and honest, and not being being confused with being weak or being, under pressure, like we can't handle it. I want to go look at some of the comments, and some people, I want to go back to No Family Left Behind 1, and I guess she's talking to a comment we made earlier about the women. They want to hear, because they want to help, they want to support. So thank you for that. Illy, ILY_red_ said, first step is to talk about it. All right. Let's see. J_E Hines made a comment about how do you overcome that fear. Is not playing the victim. If they hang up the noose, be strong enough to be the martyr. Interesting. If you have to be the one to take the sacrifice, but who's to say you're gonna be the sacrifice? You may not have to be the sacrificial lamb necessarily. Let's see. J_E Hines also said, if God be for you, who can be against you? Come on, that's a word right there. That's a lap. That's a lap right there. All right. So, last question before we get up out of here. And I want to take a moment to find out a little bit more about, again, to our viewing and listening audience to be able to check this out, to learn a little bit more about who you both are real quick. But my last question is, how can being vulnerable actually improve our relationships with others, be it personal or professional? Yes. How does this being vulnerable strengthen the bonds?
Man, I my brother and my little sister, my big bro Rain and my little sister Relissa, shout out to y'all. Man, they challenged me so much within these past few years just to be more vulnerable and open. One way that my brother does it, he talks about something as simple as saying I love you. Because we didn't grow up saying I love you like as often as I hear other people doing it. And I didn't know how common it was just for other people to just every single day, I love you. And I get out the phone with him, I say, love you. And he'd be like, no, you taking the power out of it. Say, I love you. Say the full phrase because it makes a difference. And so he would push me that way. Same thing with my little sister. We went through a lot of traumatic experience collectively as siblings growing up. And so it was, my sister just graduated with her bachelor's degree in the summertime. And we had a little function at her crib. And we sitting down, me, my brother, my sister, and her husband. And we just talking about how our experiences when we grew up, how it impacted us, and how our mother's response to that trauma, how it also affected us. And so she's breaking down all these aspects and emotions, and I'm just sitting there, I'm like, this is my little sister. And she's like breaking stuff down for her, and she's challenging me when I'm usually the one challenging her. And so just learning from those who are closest to me and those who I know have my best interests at heart, I feel like has definitely played a large influence on my growth and development, for sure.
Awesome. I love that. I love that. Okay. Just by starting with the I love you. All right. Okay. Kevin?
I'm gonna say vulnerability helps certain relationships. I believe in talking about our mental. I believe in talking about how we feel and being vulnerable in certain environments and in certain situations. I am not naive to the fact that in the business room, not many people want you to be vulnerable. They don't want you to lead with emotion. When I'm in a conference room, I'm not running no executive board meeting with any type of emotion. It's strictly business. How can it help? Do we have any key performance improvement plans, or are we doing any SMART goals, or are we doing let's measure data? Like I'm curious more about that. So I'm never really vulnerable to any of my staff or anybody that works under me. I'm more of, let's get this done. Yes, we can talk about our mental, like as far as how are you doing at work, but I don't really do too much vulnerability in a leadership style. Now, when it comes to interpersonal relationships, I think that that's heavily important. You got to communicate. You got to be able to be within to say, hey, this is a problem. I feel like a lot of people's problems is because of the simple fact is they wait too long to say something. I always tell people, I sit back and I give advice and I say, oh, you saying, oh, this is a problem. And then last week they did this. And then 3 weeks ago they did this. And 5 months ago they did this. But did you say anything?
Yep.
So you didn't. So now you letting it all build up and you didn't communicate. You wasn't vulnerable to say, hey, this hurt me. Hey, when you did this, I felt this way. We don't have to always place the blame game on somebody in order for us to be vulnerable. We could just simply say, hey, I felt like this when you did this because of this. When you sit there and use that type of method and that type of outline, it genuinely helps you genuinely say how I felt rather than saying, you did this to me, you did this, I can't believe you did this. And it releases that blame and it allows us to be vulnerable and communicate. But we got to communicate. Communication is very, 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 very important. In order to be an effective communicator, you have to be able to be vulnerable. So in certain relationships, it does make a difference. You need to and you have to have a certain level of vulnerability in certain situations. Like to be a teacher, you got to be vulnerable. You got to be able to connect with those kids and let them see how who you are and things of that nature. My kids were so receptive to me because I was saying, hey, I was y'all. I sat in the same seat as y'all sat in the same exact desk, in the same exact classroom. And with me being vulnerable and telling them how the challenges that I faced when I was in this school district before I was a staff member, it helped them say, wait a minute, mind you, these 9-year-olds, oh, we can be this, oh, we can go do this too, oh, we gonna go ahead and it. And that's what made them actually want to learn and actually want to progress and want to keep moving on. So you have to be able to be vulnerable in certain situations and environments. However, don't be too vulnerable to, that you lose sight of business. So it depends on the situation and environment.
Yeah, I think the vulnerability and building relationships is key because I think, that helps with relationship building. I love how you gave the example about your students. I mean, having been in the classroom myself, I worked at my high school. I worked at my alma mater, and I worked at my high school, and be able to share with my scholars that I sat in these same seats, I played some of these same games, and I gave them the path of, let me tell you, Mr. Brown wasn't always who you all see today. This joker was something else when he was in high school, and I'm just sharing with you all, if I can share anything with you, is not to take the path I took. But again, it took a level of being vulnerable and being open to let them know that I'm also human. Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing is I'm also human. We may think we wake up every morning with an S on our chest. Or we got it going on and there's nothing ever wrong. Or sometimes we in church and sometimes you think that person, they were just born saved. They just came out, they just too saved. They just gonna be saved no matter what, and they ain't never seen before in their life. No, but the Bible says we all have sinned. So I'd rather you just be upfront and honest and just tell me, just help me understand, what does this mean? Yeah. What does this mean? Especially when that, but anyway.
HBCUs shine in Dubai. Join the HBCU Alumni Takeover 2025 for 9 luxurious nights with flights included. Experience Dubai's finest with a lavish welcome reception, city takeovers, desert excursions, and yacht adventures. Secure your spot for only $250. Don't miss out. Join the takeover now. Visit our website for more information.
So listen, as we wrap up tonight's powerful discussion on the value of vulnerability, I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to Derrick Wilmore and to Kevin Keys for sharing their insights and personal experiences. It's clear that embracing vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, but a profound strength that can lead to personal growth, stronger relationships, and authentic living. Now, for those of you who are watching or you're listening, if you've been inspired to explore this journey even further and talk about more about vulnerability with your family, your friends, you want to do some more research for yourself, I would suggest you go check out a few things. I got 4 resources I want to provide with you. One is a book called Daring Greatly by Dr. Brennan Brown. This book dives into the deep power of vulnerability and how it can transform the way we live, love, and lead. The second one, I want you to find and read an article called Men and Emotions, How to Be Vulnerable as a Man and Why. This is by Michael David Adewusi. This article offers practical advice on embracing vulnerability and understanding its benefits. The third one I want to tell you about is, again, Derrick talked about this earlier, attend therapy and support groups. It's okay. Right here. This is a support group every other week, every other Sunday at 8 o'clock p.m. or shortly thereafter. So sometimes professional help can make a big difference. So consider you finding yourself a therapist or joining a support group of some type where you can safely express your emotion. And the last one is do some research online for some type of online communities. Websites such as mensgroup.com, again, mensgroup.com, can offer forums and discussions specifically focused on men's mental health and vulnerability. Again, reminder, being vulnerable does not make you weak. It makes you human. It doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. It opens the door to deeper conversations and connections in a more fulfilling life. Listen, it's been fun, but I gotta run. I want to say thank you again to our guests for joining us tonight. Thank you to everyone who is watching the show and this edition of the HBCU Man Cave. Be sure to check us out next time right here on Historically Black Sense IG page, where HBCU culture resides, for another great conversation. In the meantime, we want you to keep the conversation going, and let's continue to create spaces where men can relate, relax, and release. Until next time, to all my brothers and our sisters who are watching us, stay strong, stay connected, and be.
Thanks for tuning into another fabulous segment of the HBCU House Party with your host, Anthony Brown. Tune in next week for more fun, education, and inspiration as we spotlight historically Black universities and colleges all over the country. So, until next time, support an HBCU and help cultivate the wealth of talent these universities and colleges have to offer. You never know, the student you help could be the next one to change the world.
Better than yours. My HBCU better than yours. My HBCU better than yours. My HBCU better than yours. Where you from? From the north. Where you from? From the south. Where you from? From the east. Where you from? From the west. My HBCU better than yours. My HBCU better than yours. Either from the SWAC or the MEAC. Come on. The CIAA or the CIAC. HBCU is where the beat we compete. Up, we're family. From the SWAC, from the MEAC, CIAA or the CIAC. HBCU is where to be. We compete, but we're still family. My